can't promise you.
We get audio.
You get
We speak loudly.
for them? Or whatever it is. You see?
You want me to make?
I prefer it.
Okay, take one.
Just put it in your jacket pocket and just grip it when you see.
It's on? Let me know when you're ready. Long time no see. Good. Nice to hear that.
They'll just have to share it. Somehow on me, I'm going to go live on UN, so they have to share it. That's fine?
So they don't know.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Let me know when you are ready.
Let's start in a minute. I like it. Page. Check that out.
Everyone is ready? Yeah.
Ready. Yeah.
Good afternoon once again, members of the media, the viewing public. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Myself, Member of Parliament for Baratara San Juan, and MP Devendranath Tanku, Member of Parliament for Orkut West, have hosted this press conference today in order to bring some very important matters to the attention of the public and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago regarding some issues that we have identified with the government. So there are three issues that we would want to speak about today. The first being the COVID-19 grants, the second being a rebuttal to Minister Imbert's press conference yesterday regarding the rentals by the Attorney General, and the third issue being also a rebuttal to Minister Imbert when he spoke of the Young Family Affair, which is what was revealed by the leader of the opposition on Monday night at a virtual platform hosted by the United National Congress. So on the first issue regarding the COVID-19 grants, I would like to focus my attention on the salary relief grant in particular. Now, the government had announced during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, when Trinidad and Tobago was on the height of the lockdown, that they would have been providing salary relief grants to those persons who would have lost income or who would have experienced a reduction in their income. And there would have been a tranche payment of 3 times in the sum of $1,500 per payment. And I believe it would have started in April, May, and June. Now, during the pandemic, the Parliament would not have the height of the pandemic, the Parliament did not sit as often. So we would have had to wait until the budget documents were laid in the Parliament, which was on the 5th of October when budget was read, in order to deal with the expenditure and the government account for the COVID-19 grants. And based on Minister Imbert's statement in the budget statement on the 5th of October, Minister Imbert indicated that 33,830 individuals would have lost their jobs or had their incomes reduced, and they have received 81,179 grants amounting to $129.8 million in salary relief or income support grants. Now, the yellow books, which is a recurrent expenditure that will laid in the Parliament, these books reflect that no allocation has been made for fiscal 2021 for salary relief grants. But the point that we have to make here is that when you look at page 107 of the yellow books, 106 to 107, there's a line item under 007 households that deal with salary relief grant. And in that, it shows that for 2020, the revised estimate for 2020, the government would have spent $226 million on salary relief grants. Now, this is inconsistent to what Minister Imbert would have told the Parliament during his budget presentation. So he said that they spent $129.8 million on salary relief grants. When the books, black and white, they are showing us that the government spent $226 million. This shows that there is a difference of $97 million. A grand total of $97 million that is currently unaccounted for when we deal with the salary relief grants. When I asked the question in Parliament, I was not allowed, because of a ruling by the Speaker, to further question the Minister on this issue. So that is why I thought that we have to bring it to this forum in order to seek answers from the government, and in particular, the Minister of Finance. Now, Minister Imbert has to tell the country where the $97 million that they say that they have spent, that difference has gone, and why persons up to this day has not been able to benefit from these grants. So if he did in fact have spent $226 million, it would have meant that they would have been able to issue approximately 150,000 grants. That is what it would have been. Not 33,000 grants to persons. It would have meant that persons who would have applied and who are yet to receive their grants were able to get it. So Minister Imbert needs to tell us exactly how many persons applied for the grant, how many applications were rejected, how many persons received more than one payment of the grant, and how many persons are still awaiting payments. Now, when you look at the form, and my colleague will go through the form for the salary relief grant, it is more easier to get a US visa than probably get the salary relief grant, because it is so onerous that persons have to submit all of these documents and answer all of these questions, when today the sitting Attorney General, who does not even have a single lease signed for number 3 Alexandra Place, is receiving $676,000 every single month, when poor people in this country who have lost their jobs because of this pandemic have to line up in the sun and in the rain just to access $1,500. So these are the issues that we wish to raise when we deal with the salary relief grant. Now, there's also one other thing that I would like to speak to you about, and that deals with respect to salary relief grant. It is that we in fact put out a statement yesterday, myself and MP Tanku, asking persons of the public, let us know if you applied for the grant. Let us know what day you applied for the grant. And based on an under 24-hour response, there was 1,527 persons who reached out to us and said that they have not received their grants. I have their names, I have the constituencies that they are from, and I have the dates in which they have provided us with the application. I have it all here. I have it all here. And I promise those persons who have reached out to us that I will ensure that we transmit all of their information to the Minister of Finance, so those over 1,500 persons would be able to access just that $1,500 grant so that they can survive with their families. So I now pass you on to MP. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Hussain. I just want to continue from where the MP left off. There's another issue with regards to the Minister, the statement in these yellow books. As the MP indicated, $200 million was allocated for expenditure in 2021. In 2021, correct. For the salary review grant, we had a little issue. So we're very curious now is to find out whether or not this grant continues into 2021. So let's help me out here, sir. Salary review grant. Here we are. In 2020, 226,272,773 was assigned to the salary review grant. None was assigned to 2021. That means, according to the government, there is going to be no payment in 2021 for persons who have applied for salary review grants. That is based on an assumption which they got from somewhere, that persons no longer need the salary grant or will no longer need the salary grant from October 2020, which is now, into this fiscal year, which is October to September next year. They are suggesting, based on this, because there's no allocation for any salary review grant payments, they are suggesting that people no longer need it. However, just last week, I believe it was, there was a newspaper article in which a representative from the hospitality business, the hospitality industry, indicated that over 100,000 persons were unemployed still. The government opened up the cinemas. We also know that cinemas are not going to open up. They gave them the authorization to open up if they were not engaged in the sale of food. The cinemas today or yesterday, I believe it was, indicated that they were not going to open back up because it was not financially worthwhile to them to do so. And what that tells me is that there are still thousands and tens of thousands of persons who are still not going to be employed. Critical to this means that they now no longer have access to any grant. So even if they were lucky enough to have been the few that received the grants from the government in the last fiscal, there's no provision for them now. They have to catch a tail. That's up to them now. In the parliament, we asked the minister to account this $97 million, we asked the minister to account. We asked the minister to account for all grants. When we did, the minister indicated that it was very difficult because the grants, the data was not coordinated and collected in that manner. He tried to create the impression that constituency breakdown or geographical breakdown was impossible. I indicated at that point in time that it was not, because the addresses, the requirement for an address was actually a column and a row on the application form. This is the salary review grant. The salary relief grant, sorry. This is the application form for the salary relief grant. Downloaded from the ministry's website today. About half an hour ago, this is the grant that was downloaded. Here we see a requirement for home address. Here we see a requirement for postal address if different. So if the minister is inclined, these boxes here, this was all computerized. How do we know this? Well, I'll tell you in a second, but this is all computerized. All this information here is put in a computer so that the minister can search by row or by column, by data fields. This is basic. There's an Excel sheet existing somewhere or an Access sheet existing somewhere that the minister can access if he is so inclined. The minister has indicated that in earlier September, indicated that they have gone through, is it easier, can you hear me clearly, or would you prefer to take the mask off?
You could take it off, it wouldn't hurt.
Okay. Hopefully not.
That was a wrong.
Right.
We're socially distanced.
Earlier in in September, the minister indicated that he had a team of individuals who had gone through, and they had gone through all these applications for grants, and found that there were some 3,000 persons who had applied and were double dipping. How would they have done that? Do you think they went through boxes and boxes and boxes of these? They didn't, because all of these things have been put in a database which can be searched. The minister simply does not want to provide the information. He does not want to provide the data that they have asked here for. All we are asking for it to be done is collated in a particular manner so we can see where these grants actually went. So we are querying several things. One of the things we are querying is where the money was spent. Specifically that for the salary review grant, money is missing. We want a clarification as to where that went. But overall, all the grants have the same problems. The MP indicated that we have had lots and lots of people. In fact, every UNC MP, I can't speak for the PNM MPs, but every UNC MP have had people walking into their offices on office day and otherwise, indicating that they have applied for these grants and they have not received the courtesy of a response, and many of them have not received that grant. That is why they are complaining. We have asked for a geographical breakdown. That is critical moving forward. We want a geographical breakdown because we believe that there's some sort of discrimination. I have called it geographic discrimination, but we believe that there's some sort of discrimination in the allocation of these grants. Prove us wrong, Mr. Minister. Provide the evidence that these grants were allocated freely and fairly, because that is what we want. We are very grateful that some people receive benefits, but we are very concerned that many, many thousands of persons outside there have not yet received a cent of this grant. And I want to remind people, it is not just the $200 million that has been allocated, $222 million that has been allocated. The minister indicated in his budget presentation that $4 billion was already spent for this fiscal year, gone with $2 billion still to spend. $4 billion, not just to the $200 million. So we are asking for a breakdown of where that $4 billion has been spent. And that is not a difficult thing to get. All of these payments should have been made by check. All of this exists in some spreadsheet, as basic as an Excel spreadsheet, that all he has to do is print it out. This is the check value. This is the name of the person who received the check. This is when they received the check. This is how much they received. That is all we're asking for. So for the $4 billion spent, we want a comprehensive breakdown. Show us. That should not be difficult. Shut us up, please. Send the information. Provide the proof. Provide the evidence. Clear it up. This is a standard basic requirement. Following up on that, I have written to the Minister of Social Development and Family Services, the Honorable Donna Cox, asking for a comprehensive breakdown with regards to the grants. I have asked, I wouldn't read the entire letter out, it's well written if I may say so myself, but I have asked for the Minister to provide me with the names of the persons, all persons who applied for the grant, person who received the grant and at what value and when did they receive it, and that is important too, because the Minister in April indicated that they had gotten 33,000 grants, and in the same newspaper article to which I refer, in the same newspaper article, they said 1,000 grants were given out in April. We know that people still waiting, but we also know that many people receive grants late. So the minister was asking them to hold strain, wait until June, July, August, when they will get their grants, which is what resulted in a lineup outside many persons' establishments, people who were giving out hampers. You would have seen those lines. Media people covered quite a lot of it. So I want to know when persons actually receive their grants. I want to know how many applications are still being processed. We want to know how many outstanding payments have been prepared and are due to be collected. And we want to know how many people have had their applications rejected and why. All of this is part of the accounting phase for the grants that have already been given out in last fiscal. That is what we want the accounting for. And we want an accounting process done. We want the details of the expenditure of this $4 billion. When we asked the minister in the budget speech, in the budget response, during the budget debate, we asked the minister himself and two other government ministers rattled off a list of, the same list actually, they repeated the budget speech information. This is the number of grants, this is the number of the amount of money spent. We still don't know how many thousands and thousands of persons actually got grants who have applied. Because when you ask that question, they break it up in segments and segments and segments. What we need to get are the facts and the data. I think I'll just hand over to my colleagues so we can deal with the other issues.
So the other issues that I mentioned earlier that we would like to also prosecute today will be the rebuttal of Minister Imbert yesterday. I believe he had a press conference. He didn't do such a good job in defending the Attorney General with respect to the rentals. what came out of that press conference was the fact that the government has now admitted that the Attorney General is in fact the shareholder of the company that owns number 3 Alexandra Place in St. Clair. Now, Minister Imbert and I believe Minister West also would have made comments regarding the outfitting of the building. Now, in the Parliament, we were able to discover that the government is going to spend $20 million to outfit number 3 Alexandra Place, and they're also going to pay $23 million in rent for that 3-year period. And we have also discovered that there is no lease for number 3 Alexandra Place. Now, Minister Imbert would have spoken also that the partnership government would have rented a building next door from the family members of the Attorney General. The point we have to remember, and the point of distinction, is that when the People's Partnership government was in power, no building was rented from a sitting Attorney General. That is the difference. So when they come to tell us about what we did and still blame us for things that happened in the last 6 years, we have to remind them that that never happened during the partnership's tenure. The Attorney General in this cabinet has been given a rental in the sum of $23 million. That is the principal distinction we have to make and we have to remember. And what I expected them to do yesterday was not to sit down and call out figures, but justify where the $20 million in outfitting is going. Because you have to tell us how much chairs and how much blinds you buy, because apparently the minister said it's blinds and chairs and kitchen that this is going to cost. So tell us what you're going to spend the money on. 1 year already has been elapsed on the lease. So you need to tell us what you're going to outfit for the next 2 years. What additional work has to be done on this building? Because you have 2 years again only remaining on the lease. The government should give us their intention, how long they intend to rent this particular building from the Attorney General from. So those are the issues that came up yesterday. Because you have to remember also that when the People's Partnership government was in power, we tried to reduce the rental bills. You had the construction of the Ministry of Tertiary Education building in Chaguanas. You had the outfitting of the government campus of the waterfront projects. All of those projects that Mr. Manning would have done was continued by the People's Partnership government in order to reduce the rentals. But what we're seeing that this government is doing is continuing to rent, and rent for exorbitant rates to persons who sit inside of their cabinet. So that is the hypocrisy that we have to face today from this PNM administration. As we say, elections had consequences. There's one other issue that we have to deal with, which requires some ventilation. And Minister Imbert tried to stifle the conversation with respect to the Young Family Affair when it comes to the contracts being awarded to NCB Global Finance. Now, NCB Global Finance, according to public information, the CEO is Mr. Angus Young, who is the brother of Minister Stuart Young. And Minister Imbert said that only 3.7% of the government bids NCB Global Finance was able to win. But I also want to tell Minister Imbert that the 3.7% of government bids amounted to $2.9 billion. So while the percentage may be small, the value is very high, because I have in my possession a response from the cabinet to the FOI application, where the cabinet would have told us that from the period 2016 to 2020, the brother Angus Young, who is the CEO of NCB Global Finance, would have been involved in transactions with the government in the sum of $2.9 billion. We're not talking about million now. $2.9 billion. And Ebitanku will also go into some of the other issues when it comes to the other recusals. Because the Attorney General recused himself 37 times, Minister Young recused himself 57 times. And we have all of the information, breakdown here, value, dates in which they would have recused themselves. So one of the statements Minister Imbert made yesterday was regarding the transactions dealing with the father. So I just dealt with Minister Young's brother's transaction through NCB Global Finance. So Abitanku will give you some information on Mr. Richard Young, who is the father of Minister Imbert. Minister Young, sorry.
Thank you again, MP. I did not listen to the minister's press conference. So my reference here deals with what is actually in the newspaper articles. Now I think the media actually got it right. The media got this completely right because according to according to one source, and I want to read this to you, at the Monday night, the UNC's Monday night forum, which is actually the UNC Monday night virtual meeting, virtual report, Prasad Visesa said that the Young family benefited from billions in broker deals. That is true. And then there's a quotation. This allegation from the leader of the opposition that, in brackets, Richard Young, was a commission agent or broker for NCB Global Finance and got millions of dollars is outrageous, said Imbut. Noting he asked the eldest Young flat out if he ever acted as a broker or agent on NCB, which he denied absolutely. I want to congratulate Mr. Imbut for his valiant attempt to find the truth. The difficulty is that in trying to give a cover story and trying to distract the nation from what the real issue is, he tried to take us down in a particular direction. It's misdirection at its best. What the leader of the opposition said, and I will share this with you all, is basically she listed out, let me tell you why, and I'm repeating her words verbatim so that you can compare for yourselves. This is what she said on Monday night at the Monday night virtual report. Let me tell you why he recused himself from cabinet, referring to Honorable Minister Stuart Young. 1. On 6 occasions, he had to recuse himself because the matter under consideration had to do with something where his father, Richard Young, was chairman of a state entity or committee. On 15 occasions, he had to recuse himself because his family was a shareholder in a company involved in the transaction. On 30 occasions, he had to recuse himself because his father, Richard Young, acted as a broker to the transaction. Do you know what the total value of these 30 transactions was? It was 19.6 billion.
Richard Young.
On 6 occasions, he had to recuse himself because his brother Angus Young is the CEO of NCB Global. The value of these 6 transactions are 2.9 billion. Nowhere here, and nowhere there, and nowhere then did the honorable leader of the opposition indicate at all that Mr. Richard Young was a commission agent or broker for NCB Global Finance and got billions of dollars on the basis of that. If that was so, I too would have been outraged, and so should you. The facts are completely different. The leader of the opposition, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Visesa, was referring to specific transaction, and she was very clear. She did not at any point in time say that Mr. Richard Young was acting as a commission agent or otherwise or a broker on behalf of NCB Global Finance. That did not happen. Mr. Imbut was deliberately trying to distract from the information that the leader had put out on that day. However, since he has already put it out in the public domain, I asked Mr. Imbut to tell us now, specifically, what transactions was Mr. Richard Young involved in which created the situation that Mr. Stuart Young had to recuse himself. Tell us what those transactions were that came to the cabinet that involved Mr. Richard Young, which forced the Minister of National Security to have to recuse himself from it. Tell us what the value of it was. Tell us what the commission was. So basically, the minister having brought it into the public domain, we want to know what exactly did Richard Young get as a commission agent or broker for any of the entities for which Mr. Stuart Young had to step out of the cabinet from. Clear? What were the transactions? What was the value of the transactions which were presented to cabinet from which Mr. Richard Young would have been a beneficiary or an agent, commissioned or otherwise? Which state entity or private entity was he representing? And what was the value of the commission that he received? Those are the questions we need to get from the minister now. We have already established that he misdirected, but having misdirected, I think he was trying to create an illusion that we were pointing an outrageous lie against anybody. We were not. The leader was very clear. She specified, she made very specific reference to the questions she was asking, and now we are asking some more questions. The government has spent billions of dollars so far. We just want to know the way. I want to hand over to my colleague here who will provide some more information as we move forward.
So we will now ask the media if you have any questions for us regarding the three issues that we would have raised.
Afternoon, Kim or Jam? I'm pretty loud.
Yeah.
Afternoon, Kim or Jam from the Express. So, let me just come. Thanks. How to start?
At the beginning.
So let's just go back to the grants.
Sure.
Not to sound like a lay person, but could it be that that 97 million was not communicated properly and it is to be paid to an estimated amount of people?
Well, Kim, on the 5th of October, the budget statement was read and these yellow books were in fact printed. The budget books, the yellow books, would have showed that they would have spent $226 million. Minister Imbert's statement at that date would have said that he would have spent $129 million. He did not indicate if there were any outstanding payments to be made.
And the question was asked.
Yes.
And with the issue of, and with the issue of geographically, you want to see where they went. I mean, there was a concern that the pandemic was making it difficult, was making accountability difficult, and that funds may have been used for electioneering. So, I mean, is that still one of the things that the opposition would want to find out?
Okay. Definitely we would need answers on that, because then we would be able to uncover whether the government has in fact used state resources for the purposes of campaigning in an election, because then that is, and we're getting into a very serious situation there where state resources are being used to propping up one particular party for an advantage in an election.
How does one prove something like that?
Well, the thing is, Kevin, when you look at the numbers and the figures and you see where the grants were allocated, you would see whether or not there was any influential, any resources placed in influential parts of the country to sway where the voters would be.
The request for information is multifold. That is one clear factor, but we also want to determine why so many people seem to have not benefited. And we all know, you all would have been covering some of these things. Some of these people are living in very dire circumstances, but cannot seem to get a benefit from the government. That's very, very unfortunate. We want to find out why.
I have one more question for now, and it's, it's overall generally what we're speaking about, but might be a little bit out there. And that is to ask either one of you how you feel about the social climate right now. Just all things considered, how you feel about our social stability as a society right now. How are people feeling? Where
of Parliament that I see, I saw a couple hundred persons already, and the cry is they have lost their jobs, they don't know how they're going to feed their children, and other persons are coming for devices. We have so many billions of dollars being spent right now, and you have so many hundred students who are left without devices and can't access education, can't get food. So right now I'm not happy where we are as a country with regards to this pandemic.
100% I share that view. The country is in a very difficult state. You all would have seen it as well. The level of unemployment is astronomical, which is why we are concerned. This is why the timing of this press conference is as it is. We are very concerned because now when things are difficult, you need to properly budget. You need to appropriately spend your money to make sure it reaches those most desperately in need. Is why we need to get proper accountability from the government. And we're not getting that.
What kind of Christmas do you think we're going to have, pandemic notwithstanding? People are, out of pocket now.
It's going to be a gloomy Christmas. We see so many businesses shut down. If you take a walk in the mall, you will see how many empty stores there are in the malls. You will see the normal town centers, that it's really, really slow. You hardly see anybody. You see people complaining on a daily basis. So I don't see a very bright Christmas this year.
Agree.
Sure.
You know, I've been seeing government ministers bandy about huge numbers of so much millions on rent and millions on and when you go on social media, the story you're getting is very different. Like when you go on the ministry's website, you're seeing people. So what I'm interested in, what external mechanisms, apart from the he said, she said of party politics, what sort of external mechanisms could one bring to bear on it, such as the Office of Auditor General, the accounting officers in the public service, who are supposed to be authorized to make these things. But there should be some sort of, even if we don't call names, but there should be, you could see a stack of, let's say you're sending out checks. I don't know how they do this, but send out checks. There should be, look, there's a stack of 1,000 check stubs for checks, or a stack of 100,000. There has to be some indicative that because to me, well, I shouldn't really inject opinion, but I'm seeing a difference on what people are saying on social media to what the ministers are repeatedly saying. So if there's any external mechanisms that...
What I can think of, Sean, is that there's always that very powerful piece of tool that we call the Freedom of Information Act. And that is something that we can engage, and that we may engage in the near future to really get answers out of the minister where these grants have really gone. And we also ask how many persons are yet to receive, because I, just like you, agree that social media is flooded with comments.
Good afternoon, Archie from TV6. Now my question is just a little bit off topic. I don't know if you'll possibly entertain.
Sure.
Can I go ahead? Okay, so Vasan Bharat this morning, he would have indicated, your smile, right? He would have indicated his intention to contest leadership of the UNC. During his discourse, he made two very interesting points. He said that according to him, according to the constitution of the party, certain party posts such as chairman, etc., ought not to be occupied by sitting MPs, and that was something that he would have intended to address. That's one. And I think the other was that, senatorship being allowed to, someone has to be a member of the party for at least a year before certain posts are offered to them. Example, senatorship.
With respect to the chairman, I will answer that question. I would ask you to also pass a copy of the UNC Constitution to Mr. Barrett, so that he could properly read the Constitution to really see what the position is. There is no disqualification for someone to be a sitting MP and be the chairman of the party. So that is totally out of question. So that is totally incorrect. Dave, you can speak to the senatorship.
Well, I want to also speak to the other part, to the other positions in the party. The party constitution is very clear. It's absolutely clear. I think that deals with both the senatorship and the other posts in the party. The party constitution is very, very clear. And we have been fully abiding by the party's constitution.
Another question, another supporter, if you may, of the party, Devan Maharaj, just issued a statement saying that this is yet another meeting at the office of the opposition leader and she is absent again.
Yeah. This press conference was called by the Member of Parliament for Barataria San Juan and the Member of Parliament for Urkuch West. And we'd like to focus on the salary relief grant, the rentals, and NCB Global Finance.
Any general comments on the internal election as it goes forward? You're going to contest posts, etc., etc.?
I think we should focus on the issues that we decided to raise today, which are NCB Global Finance, the rentals, and the COVID-19 grants. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alan.
Yeah. Have a good day, everyone.